Welcome to the Exploring Washington State podcast. Here's your host, Scott Cowan.
Hi, everyone. Scott here. And before we get started with today's episode, I just wanted to take a second and say thank you so much for listening to the Exploring Washington State podcast. We really appreciate all the feedback that we're receiving from you and would love to have you continue listening and providing us feedback. And if you take a second and maybe leave us a review on iTunes, we would love that. I can assure you that reviews, honest reviews, good, bad, or indifferent, we would love to have because that's going to help us, continue to improve our podcast. And also, if I could ask a favor, please share this episode with friends and family. Let everyone in on the fun of exploring Washington State. So today's episode is a conversation I have with Ava Davis, and Ava is a cider enthusiast, and she's also a hiking fan. And she is based out of Tacoma. And so our conversation today talks about hiking, ciders, and Tacoma. I hope you enjoy it. And once again, thanks for listening to the Exploring Washington State podcast. Here we go. All right, everybody, welcome. Today, our guest is Ava Davis. Ava has written a couple of articles for us. And the common theme of these articles are they have numbers in their title. So that's why I wanted to talk to her. So most recently, she has completed an article for us called How to Realistically Complete Your 52 Hike Goal. And her first article with us was 8 sensational ciders to warm up your Washington winter. I will take 8 Washington ciders for 200, please. But Ava, welcome. And why don't you tell us a little bit of your backstory and talk to us a little bit about this whole hiking and cider thing got going for you.
Sure. Yeah. So, I'm Ava, and I run a cider review blog on Instagram. And yeah, I love cider. I've loved it for a long time. And about a year and a half ago, I was like, I'm going to share this love with everyone else. And I just started writing some reviews, posting what I was drinking. It's kind of evolved from there. And then the hiking was also a passion of mine. And I was like, well, let's just combine the two. And so last year I actually made a goal to do 52 hikes in a year, which I don't know why I made that goal. It was just like one of those things that I was like, let's do it. Let's try something new. And it was hard, but I did it. And I explored so many new places in Washington that I've never seen. So it's just, So you actually did 52 hikes in the year. Yeah.
Now you didn't do just one a week though, did you? Did you like double up on weekends type thing?
Yeah. Or? So I had every intention of never ever doing one every week because I knew I wouldn't do it. Like, it's just not feasible. But I'm a teacher. I work in schools. And so I knew I would have the summers where I could kind of catch up and do that. And then the pandemic hit, everything was shut down. You couldn't even go on the trails. So I played a lot of catch up during the summer, like doubleheader weekends, backpacking trips, all of that.
So for your definition of a hike, what did you think of as what's a hike? Because to me, it's going up the stairs from the office here to upstairs. That's a hike because it has altitude.
Yeah.
I don't think you're that lazy.
Yeah. In the beginning, I had this like lofty goal that had to be 52 different hikes, that they had to be all like 5 miles and over. And then when everything shut down, I was like, okay, if it's over a mile and it was included in the Washington Trail Association's like map of hikes, and I'm going to count it. So some of the neighborhood parks are included in there, the trail systems in those. So I counted those as hikes. And I typically wanted it to be at least a mile. Like if it was less than a mile, I was like, that's just going for a walk.
Okay. Right. So I was, jokingly say, when you walked around Wapato, did that Wapato Lake in Tacoma, did that count?
I did Titlow Beach, and I walked the trails there, and I counted that as one. Actually, I think I counted it more than once because I was like, I'm not going to get to 52. I don't count this more than one time. Okay.
So tongue in cheek, this is not an episode about hiking and drinking at the same time. We're not advocating, drunk hiking. That's not it. But we're going to combine the two topics. So there we go. Set the ground rules. So let's talk hiking first. Of the 52 that you did, what was the longest hike?
Now I have to look.
You can cheat. You can look. It's okay.
No. I kept track of all of them.
Okay. And what did you use to keep track?
Like a list in my phone where I just wrote them down.
Okay. Well, I didn't know. I thought maybe you were using some hiking app, or you were really a data nerd.
I did after like May. I started doing that. So my longest hike, and most of them I did in Washington. I did a few in California and, a couple in other places. But my longest hike was 11 miles, and that was to Green Lake down by Mount Rainier. So it's down in that like Carbonado area, kind of that entrance to Mount Rainier. Beautiful hike. The first couple miles, you're just like on an old forest road, but then you just like climb up the rest of the time. And there's like a waterfall offshoot trail, and then you get to the top, and I did it in the winter, so it was just frozen beautiful lake. It was awesome. So that was the longest one I did. That wasn't broken up by like backpacking and staying the night. So like in a day, in and out type thing.
And what of the 52 hikes was your favorite?
It's like asking me which child is my favorite. I'll answer though.
As will every parent. Come on, let's be honest.
Don't tell them. I think like my most favorite hike that I did in this 52 hike like span was I snowshoed up to High Point or High Hut in Mount Rainier.
Oh, okay.
So I think it's about 6 miles round trip and just beautiful snow. And then you get to the top and it's just like, there's Mount Rainier. And it's just beautiful. And, had some ciders, hung out, talked to all the people that were around. There's a structure there that during non-COVID times you can reserve and stay in and snowshoe up there or hike up there in the summer and stay for the night. And that's goals maybe next year.
Okay.
And then out.
So as I'm reviewing your article here, which is the beautiful thing about doing this, is I can scroll through things while we're talking. You lay out, I'm giving some big items here, but basically we have a subheading of set a goal. Well, our goal is 52 hikes. That's a goal. I'm sorry. Yeah. That's an ambitious goal. Plan it out. And you reference the Washington Trail Association's Trailblazer app. Mm-hmm. Why? Because as I joke, I am not an outdoor enthusiast, so I don't know anything about that app. So I'm going to assume somebody else listening to this doesn't know as well. So what's the Trailblazer app?
So Washington Trails Association is just that. It's an association of volunteers, and I don't know all the specifics of it, but they have all the hikes in a map, and you can go on there, especially if you go online on like the online interface, like through a web browser. You can be like, I want to do a hike that has a waterfall that's less than 5 miles, that's within an hour of Seattle, and less than 1,000 feet elevation gain, and it'll show you all the hikes. And so it's just a great planning tool if you're like, I don't want to go where it's snowy today, so I'm going to find a low land hike, or it's fall colors and I want to find a hike that has, the trees changing, and it will tell you that. So it's just a good tool. I like that one personally the best because it's only Washington hikes. And so you don't get you don't search for something and then find something that's like in North Carolina or whatever. And then the users are really good about updating the trip reports. So I'm going to go do this hike and I read the trip report that tells me that there's a bee's nest on the trail and every single person that they saw walking on that trail that day got stung by a bee. I'm probably not going to do that hike this week. I'm going to, save it for later.
Especially if you're like allergic to bees, this is great information to know. That's wow. That's amazing.
Or, the roads washed out, or somebody went and they were like, every single car that was trying to drive on this got stuck and we were towing them out. And, it gives you an idea of if that hike is a feasible hike, or if it's even a good hike. They rate them. So sometimes I'm like, well, it only has 2 stars. Probably not going to do this hike. It's not worth my time.
Okay.
So.
Well, then your next part is be prepared. I think we're interviewing a Boy Scout here now, but,
I was a Girl Scout for a very long time.
Okay. So if you guys need cookies, maybe she can hook you up. Just so you know, people, if you're looking for Girl Scout cookies, no, just kidding. Totally. So you've got, and I haven't clicked on the link here. You've got Pack the 10 Essentials. And so I'm going to click on that, and I don't know where that's going to take us to. Oh, something from REI. So what, in your words, are the essentials for somebody to have a successful and enjoyable hike?
Well, you got to bring all 10, because even if you're just like wandering out and you're like, oh, it's a mile hike, like anything can happen. I've been on hikes and seen people that have broken their leg and they're just stuck there. So you need, food, and probably a little bit more than what you would actually need for the hike you're going on. water, some kind of navigation, whether that's the app you're using, a paper map, a compass, all of those things. You need shelter. So if emergency happens, maybe you have an emergency blanket, something to start a fire with. I'm getting some. I think I'm at 5. What else? You need like a water filtration system, something to get yourself clean water if you run out of water, and water in general. You should probably bring extra layers. So in case it gets cold, you have some things that you can, or you get wet, you have something else you can put on. You got in front of you. What else am I forgetting?
Well, we've got the 10 hour navigation. So like you said, headlamp.
That's the one I didn't bring for a long time. I was like, why would I need a headlamp? I'm hiking in the middle of the day. And then, sometimes the middle of the day hike turns into a nighttime hike.
Well, my logic would be if I'm hiking in the middle of the day, why do I need an emergency blanket? So I wouldn't take that necessarily. But like I said, my hike is up the stairs to the house. So anyway, but okay. So we've got headlamps. We have sun protection.
That's the other one. That's the other one I always forget too.
Yeah, because sunburns are no fun. I mean, if you're out there and getting you back of your neck burned and all that's no fun. First aid.
Yeah, I bought this little thing from REI and I love it because I don't have to think about all these 10 essentials. It's like this big. You can't see how big I'm holding up, but like the size of a sandwich, and you throw it in your bag, and it has like 6 or 7 of those. So the only thing I think about is water and food and layers usually.
Right. So a knife, which makes sense. Fire, shelter, extra food, extra water, and extra clothes.
Yeah.
There you go.
And then I always bring the 11th essential.
Right. Let's talk about that. Well, let's put that in here, but then we're going to circle back to that. So the 11th essential
is a cider.
Okay. All right. Okay. So we're gonna get there. Okay. So then your next part is actually go out and doing the hiking. And I can't imagine. I mean, really, to me personally, all kidding aside, trying to do a hike a week for 52 weeks in a row seems daunting just because of life. Who knows what's going to happen this week that's going to blow up my plan to go hiking on Thursday. So to do 52 in a year is pretty cool. And I like the way you've laid it out.
I think it's feasible for, I had an advantage because I had the summer off, but I think, even if you double up on weekends, like it's feasible for most people to set the goal and to complete it, especially if, not every hike has to be 10 miles long. You can get out there and visit, a little waterfall and then drive down the road and do another one. And you did 2 in one day and it took you 4 hours.
And it's not like you're walking on a track in circles to go 5 miles. And, you're getting out into nature, you're seeing something cool.
Yeah.
Earlier, before we got on this call, we had talked earlier, and you had mentioned you're a big proponent of the Leave No Trace movement. And what are you seeing this last year? What did you see on your 52 hikes? Are people being good stewards, or are we, we got a ways to go?
Yeah, and it's difficult because in this year that we had with the pandemic, kind of the only thing a lot of people could do to get outside was to go hiking. So you have a lot of people who necessarily don't know what they're doing, and not that hiking should be elitist and not that it should be, just for certain types of people, but there's a way to educate yourself and to make sure that you're doing no harm. And so, you're going out on the trails, and like the big thing I see is like trash. They weren't doing a lot of trash pickup because, they're not sending the workers out there. The bathrooms are closed and locked. And so people are just leaving their things where it would be, but it's not, those services aren't available. So, the Leave No Trace thing is leave it how you found it. And that includes like not taking things with you, but also not leaving things behind. And so coming prepared with a plan and knowing how to do that is a big part of hiking. And it's something that people need to be educated on, because you don't know, like, you're just like, I'm going to go for a hike. And then you're out in the woods and you're like, well, now I need to use the bathroom. What am I supposed to do? Now I ate the sandwich and there's no, there's nothing for me to throw it away in. So what am I supposed to do? And so it's really just about like education and stewardship in that way, which, a little Google search will tell you what you're supposed to do.
Absolutely. So do you have the goal for 2021 of doing 52 hikes? Are you going to try to do this year too?
I'm not going to. And I think the big reason is that like I did it already.
Okay. You got the t-shirt?
Huh?
You got the t-shirt?
Yeah, I wish. I don't know if I think you have to pay for the t-shirt, and I don't want.
Yeah. Well, since it's your thing, you could print it yourself. You're good. Okay.
I'll just get a Sharpie out. I definitely am going to keep hiking. I think I've done 3 so far this year. So if I wanted to, I'm kind of on track, to do the 50.
So where have you gone at the time of recording? This is January, so 2021. So where have you gone so far this year?
I have a list of that too. Some of them are not in Washington. I actually took a trip down to Portland to visit a friend and kind of do some like masked, socially distanced hangout or whatever. So in Hood, and we did like the Multnomah Falls, and then we did like a little loop. There's like Portland has a park down there. We did a little loop there. But my very first hike of this year, me and my mom took up my dog for a hike in like a neighborhood park that I'd never been to. And so part of me is kind of like, well, I think it would be cool this year, instead of doing 52 hikes, is to explore like the natural areas and parks in my own neighborhood or in like my own city, and kind of discover ones that are different. I live like near Tacoma, and Titlobo Beach and Chambers Bay are the ones that I always go to. I'm like, I'm going to take my dog for a walk, or I'm going to go with friends outside. I always go those 2 places. So,
well, and there's that really, well-kept secret. It's a small little park there in Tacoma called Point Defiance. Not many people know about it.
Hush, don't tell everyone the secret.
Yeah, it doesn't exist. But no, I mean, Tacoma's got, that's an amazing park that you can wander around in for days, literally, because it's so large, and it's got such a great change. You can be down on the water, or you can be up in the trees. And go look at the roadies and all that. It's a cool park. It's something Tacoma is and should be very proud of, that they're, and very lucky that they have it. Another one, you're within a reasonable drive to Rainier. That's that small hill that we all see. Nobody really knows what it is, but Mount Rainier and all the things around it, you've got, an abundance of things there. That's kind of the nice thing about Washington State, is literally you don't have to go very far to go on a hike anywhere. No matter where you live in the state, there's some place pretty darn close to home that you can go and check out.
Yeah. So, of protecting these lands. So there's places, like you said, within 30 minutes of pretty much anywhere in Washington, you can find somewhere to go outside where you're kind of away from the hustle and bustle of your life, really reflect on things.
I mean, even the city is big as Seattle. In 30 minutes, you can get outside of it, and even if it's just walking around in Green Lake. I mean, Green Lake's not very far out at all, but it's certainly, when you're walking around on it, it's a very nice place to go for a walk. I'm not going to call it a hike. That's a nice place to go for a walk. You mentioned your dog. Did you do many of your adventures with your dog? And what about when we take our animals with us on these hikes? What do we need to be prepared for taking Fido with us?
That's a good question. I took him maybe on 2 of the hikes I went on. If you're going to bring your dog, you got to look and see if the place that you're bringing them allows dogs. I know, like Mount Rainier National Park, you're not allowed to bring dogs in there. There's wildlife and things. And so I also know, like up in the North Cascades, there's the Ross Lake National Recreation Area, and dogs are allowed there. But if you cross over into the North Cascades, wherever that demarcation line is, you're not supposed to have dogs. And so you got to do your research beforehand to know. But if you are bringing your animal, whether it's your emotional support dog or cat or, squirrel, I don't know, make sure that they're on leash, because that's also, nice for people, because people are afraid of dogs. And I love seeing all the little puppers on the trails, and I will always, tell them how adorable they are. But people are scared of dogs, and some people go out there for relaxation and to get away from things, and then something, comes at them. It can be startling. So keeping them on leash, taking, care of their messes that they make, making sure you have food and water. The same essentials you would bring for yourself, you're going to need to bring for an animal.
Right. No, absolutely. I agree. So one of the things, for those of you who are listening, this is called a transition. So one of the other things is you go hiking with cider, which is part of my question, the leave no trace. So if you're packing in cider, you've got to pack it out. You're not leaving a can or a bottle of it behind. And I know you're not. But in your first article for us, one of the things that I thought was pretty cool was that you took photographs of the ciders on location, if you will. So in some of your hikes and all that. So that's the 11th item that you mentioned that was not included on the REI guide. So let's talk about hiking and ciders. What started you combining the two?
I think that a big part of it is like that idea of like celebrating when you get where you're going when you're hiking. And so, a lot of people, they call them like trail brews, or I can't even think of the other words they use, but it's when you get to where you're going when you're hiking, it's like that celebratory drink, whatever that might be for you. And so for me, that's cider. And so that's just a natural thing to start bringing it with me. Also,
so how long have you been combining these two? I mean, yeah. So when did you start this?
I mean, I started the cider review thing about 1.5 years ago. Oh, actually, it'll be 2 years at the end of April.
Okay.
But I mean, I was always bringing, you go camping, you go hiking, you just throw a can in your bag and there you go. The difficult part with, doing the reviews, I didn't want to just have like a picture of a bottle like on my table with a plain wall behind it. Like, here's this beautiful cider someone made and here's this very boring backdrop. So I will fill a backpack and just go for a walk in my neighborhood sometimes and, throw 6 bottles in there, get all that extra weight and go for a walk and find cool things to take pictures of. If it's glass, I generally do not take glass on hikes because it's way more likely to break and it's heavier. Like, I don't want to carry, like, I'll carry the cider weight, but I don't want to carry like the receptacle weight afterwards.
Fair enough.
Can't leave it behind. So, those heavy bottles. So if it's a picture of a bottle and it's out in nature, it was probably within a short walking distance from my car or from my house, because I did not carry that all the way up. Except for my very last hike, my 52nd hike, I carried a bottle of champagne in my backpack and we popped it at the top. So that 11-mile hike, that was my last one.
So you carried a champagne bottle 22 miles.
It was 11 miles round trip.
11 miles. Okay, so 5.5 each way. You carried that thing 11 miles. Yeah. So hopefully the champagne was good.
It was very delicious.
All right. So trail, got it. We got we've got the whole combining our ciders and our hikes together. So let's transition away from hiking for a few minutes and let's talk about your cider tasting and your reviews and all these things that you do. What really was the motivation for you to like formalize it and put it on like its own platform and that? So, I mean, it takes a lot of work to do this type of stuff,
Yeah.
Every week we're putting content out on Explore, and it's a lot of work and you're putting out a lot of cider content. So what was the motivation?
It's funny, like when you think about Instagram and it's all Instagram, like that's kind of like what led to it is you have to have something that sets you apart. Like I have a personal account. That's my hiking one, Ava Wanders. And it's just like my day-to-day life. Like here's a hike I went on. Here's like some food I made. Here's this trip that I went on. And it's just very eclectic and it's me. But you get the people who just are like, yeah, I'm your friend and I'm going to follow you. But if you want to like build a base where people really are interested in something, you have something that you're passionate about. And so I was like, well, I'm passionate about cider, so this is what I'm going to do. And it really just started like, here's a cider I had at a bar and I took a picture of it at the bar and I wrote with it what it tasted like. And then, 6 months down the road, I reached out to some cideries and I was like, I would love to review your stuff. Can you send me some samples?
I see what this is all about.
Yeah, it's about drinking cider. For free.
Got it.
So, 50% of them responded back with yes, and some of them didn't respond at all. And some of them were like, oh, it's too expensive to ship cider, or who are you? What are you talking about?
Okay. So let me interrupt you and ask you this question. So you sent out a bunch of inquiries saying, hey, I'm Ava, send me cider for free.
I mean, nicer.
And I'll review. And, yeah, I know. And I'll review it and I'll share the world what I think of your cider. So you sent those out,
Mhm.
and yes, you were nicer. Without naming names, without, just from all the pool of data that you have, who was more responsive, small cider places or bigger cider places?
I don't know. It's kind of 50-50.
Okay.
I think that the cost of shipping cider is prohibitive for a lot of the smaller cideries. So a lot of them were like, hey, I'm going to be, they self-distribute a lot of them. So they're like, I'm going to be driving through Tacoma to deliver to Peaks and Pints or, one of the places. And they're like, can I just bring it to you? And I'm like, yeah, here's my address. I was going to give it to you anyways to ship it to me. So just drop it.
Right. Stop on by.
So they'll find workarounds for it. But as far as like shipping to my door, mostly the bigger cideries will do that. But even like they have tap rooms, they're like, come in and we'll do flights and we'll talk and we'll give you a tour. And so it just depends like what the book.
Okay. So it was a mixed bag. Okay. So I hijacked you there. So as I warned you, I would do. So you started sending out, requests for ciders, and they started providing you with some or not. And you're doing this. And tell us more. I mean, just keep going on that.
Yeah. So 6 months in, actually like 3 months in, 2 months in, it's my birthday. And the cidery from California is like, hey, I am going to the cider festival in Portland and I need someone to help pour at our table. And part of it is you get like a free bracelet, like a vendor bracelet. You can drink as much as you want, try all the ciders. And I just need you to work for like a couple hours so I can, kind of schmooze and walk around. And I was like, well, I already bought tickets, so I'm not going to do that, but I'll see you and say hi when I'm down there. And so I go down there and he's like, well, I still have the bracelet. So he gives me the bracelet. So I have a vendor bracelet. And so everybody just assumes you like work for a cidery. And it was just like the golden ticket to it was bad. It was bad. I learned
it was bad.
You have to learn your lesson at some point in life. And that's when I learned my lesson about.
You learned your lesson. Okay.
Unlimited amounts of alcohol are bad and that you need to pace yourself. Everyone who's listening. Everyone. Don't do that.
Consume responsibly.
Yes, exactly. And so, and I was responsible. I wasn't driving. I was, I was an adult. But from there, it's a huge festival. It's called Cider Summit, and they do them in Seattle, Portland, San Francisco, and Chicago every year. Kind of shifted like a virtual this year. But anyway, so they're doing one in September in Seattle. And I was just like, the worst I can do is ask for free things and people say no. So I emailed the company and I was like, I run a cider review account. I would love to like work with you guys and do a giveaway and give away tickets to your festival. And they were like, okay. So that was like my first giveaway on Instagram. I got tickets to go to the festival. I covered it, posted about it while I was there, and afterwards gave away tickets to people in Seattle to come and go to it. It just kind of like exploded from there. Like I started going to cider festivals and getting invited, got things shipped to me, and I've just been reviewing a lot of ciders. I think I've done over 350 in the less than 2 years. Like individual reviews of ciders and meads and ginger beers.
Okay.
But mostly cider.
Mostly cider. So I always ask these type of questions because it's funny when I ask it, but actually I think it's a great question. So I really think it's a great question. So I always ask, like when I talk to an entrepreneur, I ask them like, well, what was something that you thought was going to work great and then just failed because you thought, oh, this is going to be brilliant and it just did not work. So I'm not asking you to tell us the worst cider you've had, because I'm not trying to say that, but what was something that somebody sent you or you bought or whatever it is, and you thought, this sounds great. This combination and I'm looking on your site right now, and I'll just give you an example of where I'm going, and hopefully this one doesn't meet hopefully I'm not picking, but you've got this one that's a mint and basil. Mm-hmm. And to me, that doesn't sound like something I would like to try, but maybe you go, oh, this would be awesome. And you try it and you're like, okay, that didn't work at all. So what are some fails been in the cider world? No brands. I'm not trying to.
What's funny is that the flavor combinations typically can be done really well. Like that one, like a basil and mint, like you would think like, why would you put that with apples? but you get like these mellow flavors. Like, you're thinking like, I'm drinking this and it's going to taste like toothpaste. Like that's probably in your mindset. You're like, when you see those flavors, you're like, I'm going to taste this and it's going to taste like toothpaste and it's going to be gross. But it's not, because they go through, just like any company, they do like quality control. So they're like checking all these things to see. The most disappointing ciders that I've ever had were just like they were like watery and like no flavor. So I can't think of a flavor combination. There was one, but it's so like rare. I don't want to say it because then like,
sure. No, I'm not asking that.
Like the combination just it didn't work for me. It like, It was a little toothpastey. It was the one with mint, but it wasn't that one, but it was something with mint that just.
So the one that I was referencing is, I nod my head, like, cause I'm looking at your website and you're sitting in Tacoma and I'm in Wenatchee. The basil and mint, I was thinking it was going to taste more like pesto. And I was like, I don't want to drink pesto. I like pesto. I don't want to drink pesto. That's where I went. I didn't eat toothpaste until you said it. I was like, oh man, I was like,
you're like, no, definitely don't want that. I mean, it's surprising what they can get away with and put in ciders. And you're just like, this is amazing.
I had one here and I can't think of who it is. They're in East Wenatchee. And I apologize. I'll find a link and send it to them. I went with some friends to their tasting room in East Wenatchee, and they had a cider that they aged in bourbon casks.
Ooh, I bet you it was Union Hill.
Oh, that is exactly who it is. Yeah. Thank you.
I've had their one that's aged in. Yeah, it's good.
That was a and I was like, okay, I think this sounds like an interesting combo. And it was really quite tasty. We were sitting outside because of COVID and we thought it'd be a good idea still to go and it's too cold. No, it's just.
Especially over there. Yeah. Oh my goodness.
Well, we had heaters and a fire pit and all that. And, it's still, I realized after about half hour, I was like, I don't feel my feet or my hands anymore and I can't hold the glass. So why am I here? But it's they're really nice people.
Yeah.
It was just, I can't wait till it warms up a little bit. Okay. So the flip side of that question then is, what's a combination that you think is awesome in ciders?
There's a lot. There's people who, are purists and they're like, I only like ciders made with apples. And I am a cider fan of like all varieties, like adjuncts, all those things, add things into them. And I love it. The cider that like is ingrained in my brain and they don't make it anymore. It was like a nomadic cider maker goes to these different cideries and he just like makes a one-off recipe with these ciders and they put it out once and then it's done and he floats away. Goza style cider. And with which is a style of beer. Goza is a style of beer and it's like made with coriander and sea salt. And then whatever yeast strains they're using in beer. I don't know a lot about beer, but it was a Goza style cider and it had you're thinking salt and you're like, oh my gosh, it's like you're drinking salty ocean water or something, but it was just like just the right amount to like balance out like all of these other flavors. It was really good. And it was surprisingly good. And I think that's why it like sticks in my brain so much is because I'm like looking at this, I'm like, oh, it's going to taste like a beer or something, whatever. And then I go to try it and I'm like, this is like nothing I've ever tasted in cider before. So I don't know. That was one that it really stood out to me. But tart ciders. I like fruit ciders. I like spicy ciders. Are very good. I don't know.
Okay. So cans or bottles?
Age-old
question. Well, yeah. I mean, it's interesting because the cider I have at home right now, I've got a lot of cans of cider from a cider, Locust cider.
Okay.
And I have I kind of like a couple of theirs right now that I find really quite tasty in their got them in cans. I don't think I think I prefer bottles personally. I think that's my thing. I prefer it in glass. I do appreciate the convenience of a can.
Yeah.
But have you noticed when you're tasting all these, have you ever noticed a preference that one way or the other?
I haven't. And I've never done the research of let's get it on draft. Let's have it in a bottle. Let's have it in a can, the same cider to see if those taste things. I mean, there's nothing quite like a cider that's just fresh, from a keg. But, it depends on what kind of cider you're drinking. If I'm drinking, a heritage, heirloom single varietal apple, it should come in a bottle and probably even with like a caged cork, like it's like elevation of all the things that went into that cider. If it's a bourbon barrel aged cider, like it's probably going to come in a bottle because it took months and months and months of time and effort. And so let's showcase it where you can see this beautiful cider. But then, you get your locust or your incline or your shilling or whatever, and it all comes in a can, and it's so convenient and portable. I can throw it in my bag and go to the beach or go on a hike, and it's easy and I don't have to worry about it. And it tastes, just as delicious. So it really just depends on like my mood and my purpose for the drink. Going to a friend's house, I'm going to bring a 750 milliliter bottle of cider, that's in a bottle that's fancy. I'm going to the beach with the friends. I'm going to throw a 6-pack in a cooler and head out. So,
yeah. So we talked kind of about pairings within the cider. How about, do you do much with cider in food?
I don't. And these New Year's resolutions, we'll just bring it back to where we were before. That was kind of something that I was thinking about this year, is that I've been doing the cider thing for a while, and my, on my Instagram, I do a couple different like things that aren't just reviews. I make cocktails, and I do cocktail videos featuring cider. And then I do like live happy hours with cider makers. And so I was thinking this year, as part of kind of my, how do you want to grow this? How do you want to change it from what it is to start including some like videos or posts about cider and food and the different kind of pairings you could do. One that surprises people, and I learned this, if you have a cider that's a little too sweet for you, right? Like you're just like, this is kind of a sugar bomb. It's like just too syrupy, too sweet. Pair it with something that is sweet. It seems really counterintuitive, I know, but the sugar already being in your mouth will make the sugar in the cider seem less sugary.
Interesting. I would not have made that correlation.
Yeah, it's really weird, but it works. So if it's too sweet, eat something else that's sweeter than it, and then it doesn't taste so sweet.
So currently you're not big on pairing ciders with food, but while I was waiting for you as you were moving your laptop to get better signal and all that, I landed on your Facebook page, and there is a video of you. And since it's public, I can talk about it, right?
Yeah. Uh-oh.
No, there's this, and I'm going to read it. I got to find it. I got to scroll way back up here because it was a very recent video, some January 4th.
Yeah.
Cider inspired cocktails, PB&J. Okay. So what about pairing ciders with other alcohol? Yeah. And what have you found, and how on earth did you think about the idea of putting together this PB&J cocktail? And why don't you tell the listeners what it is? They can go to Facebook and see your video, but go ahead and let's talk about
it's on Facebook and it's on Instagram. The Facebook is kind of just like it catches everything that I put on Instagram, but it's on there. We'll talk about the PB&J. So I think I have about 20-ish cocktail videos on there, maybe a few less than that. But with the pandemic and we couldn't go out, I was like, I need something different to do and kind of like use my time with. And I'm a big fan of Moscow mules. And so I was having a ginger cider one time, and I was like, I wonder if I could just make this into a Moscow mule by adding vodka to it. Like, let's make this alcohol more alcohol-y and just, and add some vodka and some lime and call it a.
Well, you just told us to add more sugar to sugar, so you're consistent.
It's my motto. Just add more. Just do more, always. And so, part of that was so I started thinking of like, well, I don't drink cocktails. Like a Moscow mule is pretty much the only thing I drink. And so I started kind of doing like some research about different cocktails and trying to figure out a way that I could replace ingredients in the cocktails with a cider, with a flavor of cider. So, the peanut butter and jelly one, I think, was one of the most recent ones. And it was I was at the grocery store, and, you're in the line and you're going to leave, and they have the little airplane shots there at my little local grocery place. And I saw, and I was like, peanut butter whiskey. And I was like, thinking about peanut butter. And I was like, well, the only thing that I like with peanut is like peanut butter and jelly. And then I was like, there's so many fruity ciders Like, I'm just going to buy this little airplane shot of peanut butter whiskey and I'm going to make a peanut butter and jelly cider cocktail. And I actually have had a peanut butter and jelly cider. There's a couple places that make them, and it was really good.
Okay. So as I told you before we recorded, you had gone off to move your laptop. So I was doing some research. And so I'm about 44 seconds into your video. You have not tasted the video or the beverage yet. So I don't know if you think it's the best thing ever, or if you spit it out on the camera. I don't know. But so how was this peanut butter and jelly inspired screwball whiskey, peanut butter whiskey with Two Town Cider House made Marion? How was it?
It was really good. I drank it and then I was like, man, I wish I'd bought a bigger bottle of whiskey so I could make another one. It had like the jammy like characteristics of the jelly from a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. And then like that peanut butter whiskey, it really just, it tastes like a sweeter peanut butter, like the kind of peanut butter you would have in like a Reese's. Like,
really?
Yeah. And so then I just mixed it up. And so, you get that like savory flavor, but with the jammy, fruity cider flavor. Like, would I drink it every day? Probably not, but it was fun. It was really fun. So
I'm just making faces at you. And I don't know. I like whiskey. I like peanut butter.
Yeah.
Don't know that I want to try them together. I haven't tried that cider, so I don't know if I'd like it or not. So, but I like cider.
Yeah.
So anyway, I don't know. Anyway, so you were trying that. So then as I was scrolling here, you've got all sorts of interesting posts that, people can go and check out, and I encourage them to do so. What other cocktail combinations have you tried that's been interesting to you recently?
Oh man. You know what's funny is that I make these and they're an idea in my brain, and I try them before I make them on the video.
Okay. All right. So we're not ever going to catch you going, oh.
Yeah. So sometimes there was one time I made one that was like, kind of like a daiquiri, and I had put ice and like blended it. Well, the ice was gross. It was, you know how sometimes the ice gets that like that minerally, like just like chemically flavor. And so I'm like taking a sip of it and I'm just like, because it wasn't the actual drink that was bad. It was the ice that just like had that plasticky. So all of them have been good so far. The one that I had the most recently, other than that peanut butter and jelly one, is I made like a spiked eggnog.
Okay.
But I didn't make it with straight up cider. So there's a thing in the cider world that's called pommeau, which is pretty much like an apple wine. So they distill cider down into like an apple brandy, and then they add fresh apple juice or cider back to it to kind of drop the ABV down to kind of like usually between 16 and 25%. It's delicious. I've made also sidecars with it before, which was very good. So I just pretty much I don't do dairy. So I took like silk fake eggnog and with some ice, a little bit of that pommeau, that apple brandy, shook it, put some nutmeg on top in a nice fancy glass. And it was really, really good.
Okay. I'm watching the video now while you're telling me this, and it's pretty interesting to see what you're doing there.
With my festive Christmas sweater.
Yeah, that's quite the Christmas sweater. Yes, it's a 3-dimensional Christmas sweater. Yeah. I mean, it's yeah. All right. I am a dairy fan. And so when I see this silk stuff, I'm kind of like, I don't know. But how is that? I mean, for those people that are lactose intolerant or anything like that, how is this silk eggnog?
I'm not a huge eggnog fan in general, like because the idea of eggnog kind of grosses me out. Okay. Like what it's made of, I don't know. But
nog is a
flavor wise
thing.
Huh?
Nog is, everyone's scared of nog. Yeah. Everyone likes it. Yeah, just kidding. Sorry.
It's the egg part that actually scares me a little.
Okay.
But it's a little thinner than like a traditional eggnog. And so unless you're buying like low fat eggnog, which why have eggnog if you're going to buy low fat eggnog? But the flavor profile was good. Like it had like nice spices and like creaminess and all that to it. So,
well, yeah, you're at the stage of your video where you're putting the spice on top. And what I noticed was how thick the drink was when it came out of the shaker. I was like, wow, that's not thin looking. I expected it to be really, really watery, and it looks really quite good.
I shook it a lot. It was, it was very surprisingly good. Like I was like I said, I don't make them beforehand. So sometimes I'm like, please be good, please be good, please be good. And they have been in general. I've made like some margaritas using cider as like the base for it. Like I said, a daiquiri. I made popsicles. So it wasn't really a cocktail, but it was a boozy popsicle. Using.
How are we doing that? Let's wait, can't move past that so fast. Cider popsicles. Talk to me.
So I did it based on like a tequila sunrise recipe. So like tequila sunrise is tequila, orange juice, usually like grenadine, that kind of stuff. And I had I just used like a dry cider. So tequila, orange juice, dry cider, put some grenadine in there, got some maraschino cherries and put them on the bottom of the little popsicle holders, poured the mixture in, threw it in the freezer, and took them out, hours later, and I had boozy popsicles. And
frozen goodness.
They were good.
Okay, that's actually sounds very cool. So one of the things I'm taking away from this is that I am I'm a casual cider drinker. I'm not, by no means am I an expert of cider. And you're sharing with us some interesting and creative ways that cider can be consumed and enjoyed differently than just, a glass of your favorite local cider. So that's actually, for me, this has been cool because it's like, oh, there's some interesting things. I mean, I can get peanut butter whiskey now.
Stuck on that. That's ingrained in your brain now.
Somehow I don't think I'm going to, but you know what? I probably will.
Let me know.
I probably will. And I'll let you know and complain to you or something. I don't know. I'll either love it or hate it. It won't be somewhere, but I doubt I'll go, oh, it was okay. It'll be like, oh, that was the coolest thing ever. Or how dare you share that publicly?
Take it down now.
Now, put a public service announcement. That's terrible.
You can comment on there and tell everybody.
There we go. Yeah. I'll be polite, in my, no, anyway. So what's next for you? Like you kind of mentioned, like, you're thinking about maybe pairing this with food and that hasn't launched quite yet for you, but what do you think this cider and hiking adventure was going to lead to you? What do you want it to do?
Oh man. I don't know. Like I have big ideas, but a lot of it's like I have a day job. I like this. My whole mindset behind the whole thing is when it stops being fun and it feels like a job, then I'm just not going to do it anymore. Like if I'm like resentful of it. So, I mean, I've thought about doing merch. I've thought about, I have a website that I run as well that kind of is like all encompassing of cider, but I'm just not like motivated to do it. And so you can go to the page and it's just a page and like click on a couple things, but it doesn't go anywhere because I haven't worked on it enough. I think, getting some videos like in Instagram land of some food pairings would be cool. I was doing over the summer or before the summer when COVID first happened, I was doing like some live trivia nights and usually had like cider based questions. I stopped doing that because it was summer and I wanted to go outside, but I do weekly-ish interviews with cider makers and cideries and cider houses. So I'm going to keep doing that.
Let's talk about that.
Yeah.
How's that work? That's actually that's actually very cool that you're doing that. So how's that been for you? I mean, have you had a good time doing it? Obviously you just said if it's a job, you're going to stop, but what have you found the cideries to be enthusiastic to get on there?
Yeah.
Talk?
Yeah. And it helped that I had met a lot of people in the cider industry just through like festivals. There's this big, and I'm a cider nerd. There's this big festival. It's not even a festival. It's a convention. So like, there's like Comic-Con and all of those. There's one called CiderCon. And
do you dress up as your favorite apple or is it?
No. But it's just, it's everyone in the cider industry. It's mostly United States, but there's national people that come too. They come, they learn about cider, they learn about new things in the industry, whether it's like production stuff, laws, all of those things. And then you get us like cider aficionado, like enthusiast nerds that come out and volunteer and work at it. But I just met like all of these amazing people and cideries, and they're all just like so welcoming, and they just like bring you in and you become part of the family, which was amazing. So I started doing these happy hours, and I was kind of like, well, I need guests and I don't know what I'm doing. So I just reached out to some of the people that I had met, and I was like, hey, I'm going to start these happy hours. I'd love to have you come on. We could do a tasting through your ciders, all of those things. And then it just kind of went from there. In the beginning, I was reaching out and I was asking people. And then now I get messages from people like from cideries that are like, hey, we want to be on your happy hour. And I'm like, okay.
And you're doing that on Facebook, live streaming that on Facebook?
I'm only doing it on Instagram. I live stream it on Instagram.
Okay.
Yeah. Mostly the only reason I have a Facebook page is because Seattle Cider Company asked me to come on their happy hours they were running over the summer. And we were going to do it on Facebook, and I didn't have a Facebook for it. And I was like, oh, I better open a Facebook because I don't want to do this on my personal account. And then we ended up doing it on Instagram anyways. So the Facebook is kind of just like a little stepchild of Instagram. It just gets some of the content, but not all of it. Instagram is more. Okay. So, and I think the nice thing about it, and I have a lot of cideries that are like, thank you so much for like just letting us come on here, because whether you have, 50,000 followers as a cidery or 200 followers as a cidery, like, I don't care. You make cider. Let's talk about it, And so, I've had these cideries that are very small, and they're like, thank you so much for everything you're doing to like get the word out about us. And, mostly Washington cideries. A lot of them are Washington cideries that I've had on there. Some, Oregon, California, those places, but mostly Washington. And
okay.
And Locust is coming on this week on Wednesday.
Awesome. Yeah. Awesome. Who are you talking to?
The founder, but I can't remember his name. It starts with a J.
I don't know. It's Jason.
Jason. There we go. I'm like,
I'm sorry, Jason. Jason was a guest on a recent podcast with us, and he's a really nice guy. They're a great. Yeah, I really like. What I didn't realize is that they have 10 tap rooms in Washington State.
Yeah, and they're in Texas now too, I think. And
Colorado and Texas. Yeah, and they have 10 tap rooms, and it was like, not like I know everything. I don't mean like that, but how did I not hear about this? How did I not hear about a cider place with 10 tap rooms? That's a pretty impressive.
More than any cidery that I know of. I mean, I know.
Yeah, me too. And it's like, so that kind of leads me to probably the last question I'll ask you for the day, or, that I say I'll be like 27 more, but pre-COVID, Tacoma area, where did you like to go for ciders? Where some good places in Tacoma to enjoy ciders?
What's funny is that during COVID is when like a lot of these cider places have opened.
Okay.
And some of them, they're just doing to-go service right now. And when things open back up, I'll go back. But Incline Cider House, they have one down in that like brewery blocks kind of by 7 Seas in Tacoma, that area. And the thing I like about their cider house, it's Incline. So they do their ciders, but they also have a bottle shop that has other cider. And then their taps, about half of their taps are their ciders, and the rest of them are all Washington ciders from other places.
Rotating.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, he's done.
They always have a nice array of different things you can try. And I think there's 4 tap rooms now in Tacoma, cider houses like that exclusively do cider.
Locust and
so there's Locust, there's Incline Cider House, there's Grit City Cider, which is very new. They opened during COVID, and they just have their own cider there, like it's their cider. Tacoma Brewing started a cider thing, and that's Tacoma Cider. And then there's a cider house that doesn't have their own brand, and that's It's either cedar and cider or cider and cedar. I think it's cider and cedar. And they have a little tap room down there that has, the handles are all Washington, like rotating ciders. So lots of choices in Tacoma if you want to drink some cider. And when it opens up, I will be there. So
you'll be there. Perfect. Well, so why don't we wrap this up, but why don't we let you have kind of the last word, tell everyone where they can find you, and we'll go from there.
Sure. So you can find me on Facebook is just PNW Cider Girl. Instagram, Ava Wanders if you want to see hiking, that kind of stuff. PNW Cider Girl for all the cider stuff. And there's more on Instagram for that than there is on Facebook because you can't cross some stuff. Whatever. I don't understand it. It is what it is. And then I also run another site that's called Palms and Pints. Palm is the French word for apple. So it's anything that comes in a pint glass or is made with apples is kind of what the focus of it is. Right now it's all cider. And that just is kind of a repost. If you do a cider review, I will put it on there for you. And that's the name of my website too, is Palms and Pints. And eventually it will have events going on, cider reviews, different tap rooms. Like, I live in Washington and Tacoma. What are the tap rooms that are here? Haven't quite got that far, but someday.
There you go. As long as it's fun.
Yeah, as long as it's fun.
Well, thank you very much for being a guest. I've enjoyed this and look forward to you having some more articles on our site in the near future, especially if they're cider related or hiking, I guess. But, for me personally, the cider ones, but your hiking ones are going to be well received too.
I can do the cider. I got lots of cider ideas.
Awesome. All right. Well, thanks so much.
Thanks for having me on.
Join us next time for another episode of the Exploring Washington State podcast.